One, two, three, four.
This is Pastor Brian Wolfmueller, and we are grappling with the text today. The crazy Bible study people wanted to look in Proverbs for the word lazy. So we're going to take a look at that. In fact, laziness puts us in the realm of the seventh commandment, which says, "You shall not steal." And there are really two ways that our sin against the seventh commandment can break. The first is what we normally think of, and that is greed. That we trust in our wealth. Jesus is always preaching against greed. Man cannot serve God and mammon, one or the other. And the opposite of greed is generosity, that we're taking from the things that the Lord has given us. Here's a bag of gold, obviously, is what that picture is. And we're giving it away. We're sharing and not sharing, we're giving to the people that are around us. But the seventh commandment, sin against the seventh commandment can break in a different direction as well, and that is laziness. Now while the opposite of greed is generosity, the opposite of laziness is, as we will see in the text, it's diligence. And actually simply the idea of work. The Lord connects eating to working. So let's take a look at a few texts. Here's the first from Proverbs chapter 6. Go to the ant, lazy, consider its ways and be wise. It has no chief, officer, or ruler. In the summer it prepares its food. In the harvest it gathers its sustenance. How long will you lie down, lazy? When will you rise up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands for rest. Like a robber shall your poverty come, and what you lack like an armed man. So that we think to ourselves, I need a little more sleep. What I need a little more of is a little more sleep, and what we end up getting a little more of is nothing. The things are taken from us. So Solomon encourages us to go and study our ant farm. Now, from the ant to the lion, that's like Aesop's fable, we're skipping to Proverbs 26, verse 13. where a handful of images for the lazy person are kind of piled up on one text. A lazy person says, "A lion is in the road." Now you gotta see the picture. You're looking out the window, and you see out the window. Oh no, is a lion walking by. I'm not exactly sure how to draw a lion, but I'm sure it's got big teeth like this, and its tail probably sticks up like that. Here's a lion. And the lazy person looks out the window and says, "Whoa, no way am I going to go out there." Now, if there's a lion or not, who knows? But the lazy person says there is. In other words, there's always an excuse, a reason not to work. Look at this next one. Like a door turning on its hinges is a lazy person on their bed. Here's the door. Floomp, close. Floomp, open. And so the lazy person is flopping around on their bed. A lazy person buries their hand in a dish and is too tired to lift it up to his mouth. A lazy person, in other words, does not finish what they began. And that is going to be a mark of a lazy person. In another verse we're going to look at, a lazy person is wiser in his own eyes than 7 who answer discreetly. Now, this is an important thing to consider, because remember last week we talked about the fool, and 2 weeks ago, and who is the greatest fool of all? Is the one who is wise in his own eyes. So to consider yourself wise is part of what it is to lazy. I know better. I'm not going to work. I've got my own plans and my own plots. The plans, now here we want to see laziness contrasted with diligence, and we see it in this verse, Proverbs 21, verse 5. The plans of the diligence only lead to abundance, but all who are hasty lead to want. It contrasts hastiness with diligence in this text, and we see that we talk about something like getting a quick buck, a fast dollar. We want to make some money without all the work, and the problem is that doesn't lead to plenty or abundance, but to want. It leads to emptiness. Here's another verse. A lazy person will not plow in season. He will expect the harvest, but there will be nothing. One of the connections that we see in nature and that is brought home to us in the Bible is that we first sow and then we reap. The seed is planted and then the seed grows. And that these two are bound up to one another. But one of the marks of the lazy is that this is disconnected. I mean, what do you do when you sow? You put some seed in the ground, and what do you see? Well, nothing. And there's a disconnect with the lazy. Look, I didn't do anything, so nothing will result for it, so I'm going to rest now, and I'm not going to sow. But the result is that if you don't plant, there's nothing in the end to harvest. Here's an irony. Proverbs 12, verse 24. The hand of the diligent ones will rule, but the lazy will belong to forced labor. Now, it's important to think of the idea of the hand here, because the hand is often connected to work. Think, for example, first of Psalm 95, where, in fact, you have the Lord's hand, and then you have the Lord's hands. Now, what's the difference? Why the singular and why the plural? Well, when you have the Lord's hand, you have the Lord working and doing. His hand formed the dry land. When you have the hands, you have the idea of holding. So the depths of the earth are in his hands. So hand is always connected to work. We have this, when my brothers are talking to each other, they work on the oil field, and they're always calling each other hand. You have the farm hand and the ranch hand. And this is important because when Jesus goes into heaven, he sits down at the right hand of God. In other words, he takes up the work of God the Father of ruling the universe. So the hand of the diligent one will rule, but the lazy will belong to forced labor. Now, the irony in this is that when you're lazy because you don't want to work, but what's the result of not working? Well, now you're a slave. You do nothing but work. All you do is work all the time. Got some more. Here's another from chapter 12. The lazy will not roast his game, but diligence is the precious wealth of a man. Now, this means that the game, this is the result of going on a hunt. Now, when you go hunting, here you are climbing over the mountains to find, on some far distant mountain, a deer or an elephant or something else that you're hunting, and you're trekking all the way out there, and you're dressed up in camouflage, and you're doing all this stuff, and you do all this work to get to the thing and boom, to kill it. Okay, but once you've killed your game, you're only halfway done. You've got to do the slaughtering, you've got to do the quartering, you've got to pack all of this stuff out. And the lazy man, he'll go and he'll take his game, but he'll never do the work to get it to his mouth, to his kitchen, to his pot. He kills it and leaves it there. In other words, one of the marks of the lazy person is that they don't bring a thing to its completion. There is no "it is finished" with the lazy. Couple more verses. Here's 19:15. Laziness will bring on deep sleep, and a person of idleness will suffer hunger. Now, there's an irony here, because we often think that, well, I'm tired, and that makes me lazy. But Solomon is pointing out that it actually goes the other way around. When I don't do anything, I'm tired. I mean, you see this example for someone who's convalescing, for example, in the hospital. Now, they don't want to be in the hospital. This, of course, is exactly what a hospital bed looks like. And they're in bed, and they're sitting there for a week, resting, sleeping, trying to get stronger, being treated and everything else. And you think, well, they've been resting for a whole week. When they get up, they should be strong. But the opposite is the case, that rest is, in fact, leading to weakness. And you have to be trained, and you have to exercise so that you would be strong. There's a different kind of tiredness that comes from work than a tiredness that comes from lazy. And this is what this is talking about. Laziness itself will bring on a deep sleep. So I rest, I don't do anything, and I get weaker and sleepier, etc., etc. There's an idleness that is the mark here. Now this, again, we're talking about the law and the sin against the seventh commandment. One more verse. Proverbs 10:4. A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent enriches. He who gathers in the summer is a child who is prudent, wise. He who sleeps at the harvest is a child who brings shame. So again, the contrast between diligence and laziness, and Solomon is calling us to diligence. Now, this is, of course, a preaching of the law, because this seventh commandment, like every commandment, always accuses us. It is for us a condemnation to hear this preaching of laziness, because we are all lazy. But Jesus gives us something more than laziness. He gives us rest. He does not take away work, but he brings us to the end of work. Jesus is the one who on the cross says, "It is finished." And that finishedness, his death, his suffering, forgives even our laziness, our breaking the seventh commandment, and our breaking of every other of the commandments. And he, by his rest, gives us rest and gives us peace. So there it is, the word lazy in the Proverbs. Hope you enjoyed it. You can subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe by pressing this button. Or this. Here you can go to the Worldview channel. See you next week.